Hi, I'm Philip Smith, financial planner with Tide Pool Wealth Strategies, helping self-employed professionals and solopreneurs just like you cultivate resilience in your plans to retire well. This is the Financial Planning Podcast about money management, best practices for long-term growth, wealth-building truths and fallacies, successful retirement strategies, and more, where I'll be sharing concise, actionable retirement planning guidance. Welcome to the Financial Flow. Hi, welcome to episode 10. I'm Philip, and today we're wading into the waters of future value, essentially considering the future monetary value of what we spend today and what that future value might look like if invested and given an opportunity to grow. This will be a little like financial time travel, where you get to see how your decisions today affect your wealth tomorrow. If you find this episode educational or helpful, please feel free to share it, like it, and subscribe if you'd like to be connected to future episodes. It almost feels cliche to go this route, but I do commonly find myself counseling retirement plan participants on spending habits. And those are people all over the income spectrum, because some low-income earners are frugal and very attentive to their long-term savings plan, and some high-income earners have terrible spending habits, loads of debt, and very little saved for their future. So, when we talk about spending habits, there are common themes. What are you spending on the weekend when you're out with friends? Or how many streaming services do you pay for and use frequently enough to justify the money spent? There's also the discussion of vices, cigarettes or vaping or alcohol or sugar or caffeine. Caffeine is one that's really familiar for me in my own life, so let's examine that beloved morning coffee. Suppose you spend $5 each day on your caffeine fix, but only on work days. So we're talking 5 days a week. Over a typical month, that's about $110. Have you thought about this already? Over $100 per month on coffee? If there are two of you with this habit, well, I am sure you can do the quick math on that. Buy a coffee pot, some premium grounds, and a few flavored syrups. Write me a thank you card in a year when you see that savings. Anyhow, now imagine investing that money instead of spending it. A really user-friendly tool I've used on my phone to run the quick numbers is the Bankrate.com Compound Interest Calculator. Everything I'm going to share here is completely hypothetical. You have to remember that investing has risk and nothing is guaranteed. With that having been said, here are the numbers. Over 10 years, if you invest that $5 saved daily as a $25 per week deposit with an average annual return of 7%, you'd have over $18,700 saved in 10 years. Now, over 30 years, most of a working career, this continued savings habit keeps a total of $39,000 in your pocket or your savings account. It's $39,000 you didn't spend on daily coffee trips, but with that 7% annual return, you'd have an extra $132,000 saved. It's incredible how these small amounts add up over time due to the power of compound interest. So let's be honest with ourselves. That daily coffee shop fix is costing us 6 figures in retirement savings. For some people, that is multiple years of retirement spending, or the difference between retiring at 65 or 70. Do you want to work a few additional years in order to sustain the industrial coffee complex? Now, I'm sorry to any business owners out there who run coffee shops. I absolutely love coffee, but we all need to be a little more attentive to how nonchalant we are with our consumerism. And let's be honest, after 30 years of spending in the same place, you still wouldn't have so much as a coffee machine named after you at the local cafe. In a previous episode, I mentioned my days as an enlisted Marine. Back then, the term cash flow was completely foreign to me. Paychecks just appeared on the 1st and 15th like clockwork. I spent without much thought for the future, and being single, not much thought given to anyone other than myself, assuming there would always be more money coming in. It was a terrible mindset, and eventually those poor decisions financially crushed me for a few years. Later, married, and with my wife newly pregnant, we were hyper concerned about our spending and took the time to detail everything we spent money on. We did things like change our internet and cable service, shift to a lower cost mobile phone service, shop our car insurance. These things resulted in us reducing our monthly expenses by a few $100s. The eye-opener was our discretionary spending. Coffee that we bought daily at a nearby drive-through coffee stand was a gaping hole in our budget, to the tune of nearly $300 per month between the two of us. We had never sat down and looked at how much we spent. We just knew we lived within our means, but we had a big shift in priorities when we had to get prepared for the birth of my daughter. Years later, we still only spend about $800 per year, over half on a coffee subscription service, despite having a notably higher income than back then. So let's address a few ways that we can improve our spending habits. First, maybe the easiest to slip out of, and the one it takes the most effort to be diligent about, mindful spending. Before making a purchase, ask yourself if it's a need or a want. This simple question can help curb unnecessary expenses. Now, I don't always do this, but sometimes I think, if I calculate the numbers, how many extra days or months will I have to work to make up for not saving this today? Another way to look at it, would the future you travel back in time to thank you or slap you for buying that? Another strategy is to automate savings. Set up automatic transfers to your savings or investment accounts. If you don't see the money, you're less likely to spend the money. The best savers pay very little attention to their growing account balance. They just set up an automatic contribution and try to be mindful of increasing it over time as their income goes up. A third strategy is to budget for fun. Conceptually, this might end up feeling a little constraining. And when I say budget for fun, I don't mean having fun budgeting. I mean budgeting for those fun expenses. You give yourself a specific amount for discretionary spending. You have to either be hyper-disciplined or have an accountability partner to ensure you stick to this. It's a way for you to enjoy your morning coffee guilt-free, knowing it's part of your plan. The foundational premise that ties these all together, being mindful of spending, automatic savings, and budgeting for the fun stuff, is that we don't have to give up our indulgences completely. We just need to pay attention to our spending and ensure we don't harm our future financial wellness. Now, having said that, let's take some action on this. If you don't do this already, it's an action item I've mentioned before. Track your spending. Use one of the budgeting apps I've previously mentioned to monitor where your money goes. Awareness is the first step to change and saving your change. Second action item. For those who are tracking spending, start calculating the future value of stuff. Play around with an online future value calculator to see how much your daily expenses could grow if saved and invested. Again, I've used the Bankrate.com compound interest calculator. It's easy to use, doesn't have a bunch of ads surrounding the calculator itself, and it's a pretty clean interface. Third, maybe the most important, because it gives importance to the first two action items, set some savings goals already. Define clear, achievable savings goals and make them a priority in your financial planning. Remember, being mindful of your spending today can significantly impact your financial future. By thinking through each purchase, especially those small daily habits, you can build a more secure and prosperous tomorrow. Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Financial Flow, brought to you by Tide Pool Wealth Strategies. Until next time, stay resilient and plan to retire well. It's disclosure time. This podcast is intended for educational purposes only, should not be used for any other purpose. The views depicted in this material should not be considered specific advice or recommendations for any individual, are not intended to be financial, tax, or legal advice, and do not represent Tide Pool Wealth Strategies or Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a financial, tax, or legal advisor. Neither Cetera nor any of its representatives may give legal or tax advice. Our office address is 450 Country Club Road, Suite 350, Eugene, Oregon 97401. Securities and advisory services are offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, a broker-dealer, registered investment advisor, and member of FINRA and SIPC. Cetera is under separate ownership for any other named entity. Whew.